What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and welcome back to the Rumor Roundup, our weekly series where we cover all the news and rumors that you may have missed over the course of the week. And as you guys have noticed, we're doing this on Sunday. Why? Because Sunday's our new day for the Rumor Roundup. Truth to tell, Fridays was kind of a cool time to do it, but one, it's not the end of the week, and two, trailers would drop, which would basically prevent us from being able to make an episode of the Rumor Roundup because we had to make a video on the trailer instead. But who the hell releases trailers or announces anything on a Sunday? So we are doing the Rumor Roundup from this day going forward. Having said that, we are going to talk about the video game announcements, all kinds of cool stuff, but before we do, let's open up with something that's not enormously important, but it's really cool nonetheless. So as most of you guys know, Marvel movies, Marvel TV shows have largely been snuffed when it comes to awards, right? Just kind of looked over, blown over, and nobody really seems to take them all that seriously, which is strange because they are quite literally the highest grossing franchise in the history of Hollywood. Maybe it's one of those things where people say that movies are art, but if they do, how do you explain Frankenfish? Because that's not art to anybody. However, WandaVision recently changed that. For those of you guys who are unaware, WandaVision recently won the award, the Emmy Award, for Outstanding Production Design for a narrative half an hour long. This is cool because now the Marvel Cinematic Universe officially has awards under its belt. And these things usually tend to snowball, that when one part of a franchise wins an award, usually things start following suit. Now, WandaVision was a particularly good show. Honestly, I think Loki was better. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Loki started winning awards, and then in turn, depending on what kind of movies they release later on down the line, Shang-Chi, I can almost guarantee is gonna win some kind of an award, and if it doesn't, I'll be absolutely flabbergasted. I'm by no means calling it, I'm just saying I feel like it should. But this provides a bit of legitimacy to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where people are finally recognizing that this franchise really is as awesome as everybody's making it out to be, as if the money didn't speak for itself. But moving on to our next topic, Marvel has announced 4 release dates for unnamed projects. These release dates are as follows: February 16th, May 3rd, July 26th, and November 8th, all 2024. Now, there have been different responses to these release dates, the kind of idea of what these release dates might represent in sense of the movies that will be there. We will make videos here on Geek Culture Explained addressing this and what our picks are for the movies that are gonna be coming out, or possibly even TV shows that are gonna be coming out during this point in time. However, the talk of the town is Ryan Reynolds' response to all of this. So Ryan Reynolds' response was obviously joking, but he was throwing out all kinds of stuff. Fantastic One, Weekend at Blind Owl's, Gin Genie, Nick Fury Road. It was just all these goofy responses. But the real cool thing here is what's actually kind of going on behind the scenes. Have you guys noticed recently that before the Fox acquisition, Ryan Reynolds was almost never talkative about the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Almost never talked about it, almost never addressed it, never really seemed to have a whole lot to do with it. Since the Fox acquisition, his conversations about the MCU have actually ramped up to the point that he's talking about them more and more often. Has anybody noticed that? I don't know if it means anything. I'd like to believe it means something. I'd like to believe that when it gets to the point where he's talking about the MCU every day, it's because his movie's coming out that weekend. I have no idea if that's the case, but it would be cool. But it is really exciting to see that Ryan Reynolds is kind of maintaining that jokey nature that we're familiar with from the Deadpool franchise, and just kind of continuing it on in his tweets and how he relates to what's going on with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney, all that kind of stuff, the movie releases. Plus, I gotta be honest with you guys, man, Ryan Reynolds is just a bright ray of sunshine, right? Like, I feel like if Ryan Reynolds was the sun, he would just be up there smiling and like, hey everyone, I hope y'all are having a good day. Which would be awesome. But I feel like that would be Ryan Reynolds, right? So I'm glad to see that he's kind of going through and just maintaining all this positivity and all this happiness in a world that could otherwise be a little chaotic and dark at times. But moving on to our next topic, which is not the most lighthearted of topics ever, the Russos look like they're officially done with Marvel Studios. Now, I know a lot of you guys are kind of like, I mean, didn't we know that already? Not really. We knew that after the events of Avengers Endgame, in terms of them having like multi-project films, essentially, that they were kind of done, right? There weren't really gonna be any more like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, or Infinity War, or Avengers Endgame type projects coming. The only thing we knew is that at some future point in time, they seemed to be on board for doing like a Secret Wars movie. But that was basically it, right? They wouldn't really be doing anything between now and then, but it seems like that in and of itself is completely out the window. Now, a lot of this comes from a statement that was made, which reads as follows. Since the lawsuit, brothers Joe Russo and Anthony Russo, directors of Marvel's Avengers Endgame, Game, the highest grossing movie of all time, hit an impasse in negotiations to direct another Marvel movie. The Johansson dispute left them unsure how the next movie would be distributed and how they would be paid, according to people familiar with the matter. The Russos declined to comment. Now, this was reported to us, so it's not really the Russo brothers directly giving us this statement. And so what this looks like is it's not so much about the fact that Scarlett Johansson was seemingly screwed over by Disney. Now the Russos are pissed and they're like, we're not coming back until you fix it. It seems more of the idea of what we expected in the aftermath of Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit, which was the handling of the release of Black Widow by Disney Plus in relation to existing contracts with talent and seemingly other members of the movie production staff, and the movie production staff and talent's concern on whether those contracts will actually be honored. Because truth to tell, if Disney will screw over Scarlett Johansson, there's no reason to believe they won't screw over the Russos, and that's the big concern they have. But having said that, let's kind of move into our discussion about video games, which I feel like is what a lot of you guys want us to talk about. Let's talk about Spider-Man 2. Now, here's the funny thing about this, right? When I saw the trailer and they were like, Spider-Man 2, and it's gonna have Venom, my thought was like, we already have Spider-Man 2. Right, it's the Miles Morales game. And I was like, no, wait a minute. That's not called Spider-Man 2 Miles Morales, it's just called Spider-Man Miles Morales. I like that. If I'm being honest with you guys, I like that, right? It's almost kind of like an origin story video game for Peter Parker, and then an origin story video game for Miles Morales, and then they meet in the middle with like a second Spider-Man video game. I guess technically Miles Morales would be like Spider-Man 1.5, or almost kind of like a DLC that was made into a full video game. I don't really know. If I'm being honest with you guys, I think Miles Morales was better than the original Spider-Man game. But having said that, I'm excited about this, right? Insomniac Games does not miss, and I am hyped when it comes to the idea of them creating a new Spider-Man game which features Venom as the main villain. This is cool, man. You know, one thing that I've kind of been thinking about in light of all this is like, so if we're getting like a lot of video games that are basically including what would be Fox properties because the Wolverine game is coming out, which we literally got nothing on that outside of just like a giant bar fight with Wolverine sitting there, somebody walks in, he pops his claws and the trailer ends, right? So it's like, a game is coming. That's basically what the trailer was. More of a teaser than anything else. But with like video games being made really as great as they are, with what are Fox properties, Sony properties as far as the movie rights are concerned, going into actual Marvel properties, this is exciting, man, because it feels like it's all kind of coalescing together. Here's a crazy thought here, right? Here's a crazy idea. What if in the Kang the Conqueror movie, because I still stick by the idea that the Kang the Conqueror film is basically gonna be Avengers forever, right? That's essentially what it's gonna be, just Avengers from different time periods facing off against Kang. I think it'd be the coolest thing ever. But what if all of that is basically kind of coalescing from all this stuff that we're seeing, right? So like the Sony video game Spider-Man, right? Because technically he had his own comic book line, right? He did have his own comic book line for a little while. And I think you saw him in the new Spider-Verse comic. I don't remember because I don't think I actually read that new Spider-Verse comic. I had no desire to. But regardless of the situation, wouldn't it be cool if like in the Kang movie, you get like video game characters who were brought in as part of like this kind of Avengers roster or this superhero landscape that are facing off against Kang? I know it sounds crazy, it probably won't happen, but it seems cool, right? Because technically each one of these video games is their own universe. Although because Insomniac is making both the Spider-Man games and the Wolverine games, I think it'd be cool if they were in the same universe. That would be amazing. So like you get like Spider-Man 3 and like Wolverine has like a brief cameo, or he's got like a cameo in Spider-Man 2. That would be awesome. I would love to see that. But regardless, it's a really exciting time. And kind of continuing our discussion here about video games, I gotta be honest with you guys, it's the one thing I was the most hyped about when it came to the PlayStation. Oh my God, the PlayStation announcements is the one thing I was the most excited about, man. It's the one thing I didn't expect. I've been screaming about this forever. I've been screaming about this forever and ever and ever and ever. And then we're finally getting it. KOTOR Remake! Yes! Oh my God! Let me tell you something, guys. I loved the original KOTOR game, and I had no idea what I was getting into when I got it. I had no idea what I was getting into. I remember sitting at home, and I was playing KOTOR, and then I was the dark side, right? Of course I was the dark. Let me tell you something. Those of you guys who have not come from Comics Explained, the one thing that I have made perfectly clear on that YouTube channel is if I was gonna be a comic book character, I would be a villain, son. I'd be a bad guy. Like, I absolutely, man, bad guys have more fun. So I'm sitting here at home, and I'm playing through KOTOR, KOTOR, my dad's watching me and he's like, why would you choose the dark side? And I was like, because the dark side's better. Like, it's cool, man, it's fun. Like you guys, like, KOTOR had so many great moments like that. Like, when you show up on Tatooine and that one chick has like her husband's hunter plate or whatever it is, like the thing she's trying to sell to make money. And like, I'm sitting there going through all the options and then like this huge grin comes across my face and I'm like, my need is greater than yours. And I just take it from her. Like I just take it away from her and then sell it. It's a terrible thing to do. She literally gets nothing, right? They're left worse off than they were before. But I'm like, dark side, bitch, and just take it and leave. It was terrible. Don't worry. I made my karma whole. I went back and played through the light side and then let her keep it and gave her money, right? I was like, whatever, man, like, you know, but I am excited about this. For those of you guys who never played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the reason why people are so excited about this game is it was landmark at the time because the decisions that you made over the course of the game determined your alignment to the light or the dark side. And so you could literally go through and you can make decisions that would be dark side choices and then make decisions that would be light side choices and keep yourself right in the middle where you were neither light nor dark side. But you also got this kind of expansion that had been established in a lot of different ways, but was basically a way for us to kind of learn more about the Star Wars mythos, right? Exar Kun, who I'm pretty sure had been around for quite some time as far as the Star Wars mythos goes, but he was the guy who invented a double-bladed lightsaber, right? Exar Kun was a really cool character. He was not really a part of the game, more of the mythos of the game, the things that had happened before the game started, but Revan, God, Revan is one of these characters, man. I loved Revan, and I'm not gonna spoil the story for anybody who hasn't played it, but the story is fantastic. Oh my God, it's fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is one of the absolute best video games ever created. And I'm not even saying like Star Wars video games, I mean one of the best video games in general ever created. It was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. And so I am incredibly hyped about KOTOR, the remade game. Here's the funny thing about this. When it was first released, it was an Xbox exclusive. Now it's being re-released as a PlayStation exclusive. Right? So, you know, it did a total 180. Regardless, like now I got to get my hands on a PS5. I got a PS5 for my girl, but I didn't really get one for myself. I've always been an Xbox fan, but now I have to get a PS5. On the off chance that they make a new Uncharted game, they better. God, I really want to see a new Uncharted game. They can follow Nathan Drake's daughter if they want to, I don't really care, but I want to see a new Uncharted game that was as good as the other ones, right? I don't want to see one that's rushed out and crappy, I want to see a good one. But having said that, what we also got as far as video game announcements, we got to see some cool stuff from God of War, and it looks every bit is awesome. And I want to be honest with you guys, right? I know this is going to be a controversial opinion in comparison, or at least for a lot of God of War fans out there. I think the newer games are better than the older games. Like the storytelling, the way the game just feels and plays, I feel like it's better. Now, a lot of God of War fans, I imagine, might be mad about that because in truth, the new games play differently than the old games. The old games were in a lot of ways kind of a hack and slash game. It had a great story to it, but it felt different than the newer games. But I like video games that play like movies, right? That feel like movies. That's why I love the Uncharted series so much. And so the new God of War games feel like I'm playing a movie that also has gameplay in it. Having said that, Thor, from both the character mock-ups that we saw, as well as at least his hammer. His hammer looks a lot smaller than I thought it would, but his hammer, we got to see that in the video game. We got our first look at Tyr, the son of Odin. Let me tell you guys something, Tyr was legit. It's T-Y-R. Tyr was amazing, man. This guy, dude, he was like the bravest of all of Odin's son, right? Like every god everywhere respected this guy. It was crazy. Truth to tell, like I know a lot of you guys are coming from the comics. In traditional Norse mythology, Thor was a dick, right? Like he was not nearly as heroic as he's made out to be in the comics, man. He was an asshole. So Tyr was like the guy, right? He was one of the coolest characters in Norwegian mythos. Technically, he's part of the Aesir saga, but nonetheless, you know, he's a really, really cool character. I'm glad we got to see him, and I'm glad they kept up the idea that he's every bit as enormous as you would expect Tyr to be. But the game looks great. I'm still really excited to see what's gonna happen with Loki, right? I'm really excited because I don't know if it's Loki reborn. I don't know if it's Loki who made himself into a kid, wiped his mind, and kind of gave birth to himself. I have no idea, right? I mean, I know that seems weird, but at the end of the day, Fenris is a wolf that Loki basically had as like offspring. Loki's done some weird stuff over the course of the history of Norse mythology, right? So the idea of Loki giving birth to himself is not the most unrealistic thing to happen. But having said that, I'm excited about it, man. The great thing about the God of War video games is the stories keep me coming back because the stories look more and more and more intriguing. They kind of take you down this rabbit hole of mystery. And so again, I'm excited about it, right? I'm very, very hyped about the new God of War game. And having said that, our last little bit of news here actually comes by way of the Far Cry franchise. Now, a lot of you guys know Far Cry 6 is coming out. It's got Giancarlo Esposito, which I'm really excited about. We have seen multiple gameplay trailers of it. They say it's in-game footage. I guess we won't really know until the game comes out. Honestly, it's for the PS5. I'm inclined to believe that it is actually gameplay footage and not cinematic stuff, but regardless, one of the things that we're getting here is actually a DLC expansion where you can go through and control past villains from the Far Cry franchise. One of these is Voss. The other one is like Joseph Seed and Pagan Min. Honestly, nobody cared about them. I think we can all universally agree Far Cry 3 was the best game, right? Let's all just nod our heads and say, yeah, Rob, Far Cry 3 was the best Far Cry game. None of the Far Cry games have been that good ever since, especially not 4. 5 was okay, but no. 3's where it peaked. But the ability to control Voss, that sounds cool, because Voss he was such an amazing villain. Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? I loved the character of Voss. He was so amazing. But nonetheless, right, some DLC that's coming later on down the line. Now, the big problem with this is one of the things that I hate about modern video games. They milk you for everything you're worth, right? They nickel and dime you. Because in this day and age, I feel like AAA video games aren't necessarily made for the enjoyment of the fan. They're made for the acquisition of wealth. And so that's why you have like games as a service now, different things like that. So these DLCs are gonna cost you like 40 bucks. And it'd be different if we knew how long they were going to be. Knowing Ubisoft, it's gonna be like 4 hours of gameplay, right? And like 3 of these, so you're basically gonna get 12 hours of gameplay and they're gonna charge a damn near top dollar for it. I don't know if that's actually gonna be the case. I imagine everybody in the world is gonna be pissed off as it is. But in an age where companies like CD Projekt Red are releasing games that they knew were not anywhere close to being finished, I wouldn't be surprised if a company like Ubisoft gave us what was in effect a kind of half-assed DLC and charged us top dollar for it. But without being too much of a negative Nancy, I am excited to see what it looks like. Truth to tell, I'm not gonna buy the DLC when it first comes out. I'm going to look at the reviews, I'm gonna see what people say about the DLC, and then decide whether or not I think it's worth it. If I think it's worth it, then I'll buy it. But if it's some DLC that doesn't really amount to any playtime, or it's some kind of a horde mode featuring Voss, then I just won't buy it. I'm like, that's a waste. I don't want to buy that, right? And I'll leave that at the door. But having said that, I am excited about Far Cry 6. The game looks like it's gonna be amazing. The story looks like it's gonna be fantastic, right? I mean, even if the DLC kind of sucks, the main Far Cry games themselves have always been enjoyable, right? That's the one thing that you cannot dock Ubisoft for when it comes to the Far Cry franchise. The games have always been enjoyable. I don't really know anybody who sat down and played any of the Far Cry games and walked away and said, these games as a whole suck. These games blow balls. I mean, the stories vary from one game to the next, and as I've been saying, Far Cry 3 had the best story, but the games themselves are enjoyable, right? I mean, Far Cry 5 was highly immersive. There was a lot more to do in that game than there was in any of the previous Far Cry games, which makes sense, right? I mean, you always want to kind of expand and build your games as time goes on. But regardless, I'm looking forward to what Far Cry 6 has to offer. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you guys for watching. This is our episode for this week. Again, it will stay on Sundays because it's really like an undisturbed day, and we will catch you all later. Peace.